tell you, this is one of my favorite stories. I just love this image. I just love this image. And it comes from a gentleman named Sir Christopher Wren. Sir Christopher Wren was an architect in the 17th century, a London architect, built 53 churches in London, was also an astronomer, a scientist, was a founder of the Royal Academy of Science, was a peer with Sir Isaac Newton and Pascal, among others. So an extraordinary man. A man that could very easily have fallen prey to the phenomena of needing to be the smartest person in the room. And what I'm here to talk to you about now is that I believe that very frequently a sense of needing to be the smartest person in the world can really hold back your creativity, can really get in the way of your creativity, to have this desire to be the smartest person in the world. And Sir Christopher Wren, again, would have been so easy for him to buy into his success and his achievement and see himself as the smartest person in the world. But there's some important evidence in a story that I'm going to tell you here that he didn't fall prey to that he appreciated that a humble quality was perhaps appropriate and maybe even necessary for him to do his best creative work. Again, a man of extraordinary creative output. And here's the story. He was hired by a group of benefactors to design a church. And because he was an innovative thinker, Sir Christopher Wren, and because this was a period of time where the knowledge and appreciation for how to structure architectural work was changing rapidly, and he was on the cutting edge, he came to understand that to design the church that they wanted him to design, he wasn't going to need the 5 columns at the front of the church that would have been typical, that would have been conventional, that would have been usual for that period of time. Instead, he was able to figure out, through his knowledge of architectural physics, that he could build that church with just 4 columns in the front. And so that was the design that he submitted to the benefactors. I guess we would call them the suits these days. And the suits weren't happy. The suits wanted a church with 5 columns. They didn't want to be susceptible to, they didn't want to have the concern that when they returned to the House of Lords and met with their peers, that they were going to be known as the folks who had underwritten the church that tried this controversial new strategy of just using 4 columns and be associated with the church that sagged in the middle or even worse, fell down. So they were adamant. They wanted the 5 columns. Christopher Wren listened to them respectfully, resubmitted the design one more time with 4 columns, and one more time they pushed back and said, nope, we are adamant, we're insistent, we need to design this church with 5 columns. And so Christopher Wren, being the man that he was, resubmitted the drawings, in fact, with a 5-column design. They built the church with 5 columns. And 100 years went by. And after that 100 years went by, it was now necessary to do some maintenance on the church, to do some cleaning on the church. And so the folks who were engaged in the maintenance were building their scaffolding up the columns and doing some maintenance, and built their scaffolding a little bit higher and did the maintenance that they did. And then they finally had built their scaffolding to the height where they were at the height of the top of these columns. And when they got to the top of these columns, here's what they discovered. That yes, indeed, again, Christopher Wren had built the church with 5 columns as the benefactors had insisted. When the workmen got up to the top of the scaffolding, they saw that the 5th column, the column that the benefactors had insisted be put in place, the column that Christopher Wren had argued momentarily, briefly, wasn't necessary. That 5th column, there was about an 1.5 inch gap between the top of that column and the load-bearing wall. Christopher Wren, and his joy of creation and his determination that he had the right vision for how he could build this church, executed his idea while at the same time showing that he was in compliance with. He didn't have to, he didn't have to argue forever with these benefactors. He gave them what they wanted, and he accomplished what he knew could be accomplished. He left that gap between the 5th column and the load-bearing wall, and it was his humble nature, I'm sure, that resulted in him having a wealth of ideas, a wealth of creative ideas. So please keep in mind that yes, you've gotten to where you've gotten in school by studying hard and being proud of your intellect. There's a time to sort of step back from your intellect and take on a humble nature, and that's when the creative gifts that you've got will flow.